Welcome to MindCast, brought to you by Stryve. We talk to experts from all walks of life and discover their secrets that will allow you to unlock your potential and live the successful, fulfilled life that we all strive for. Our guest today is a self-taught writer focused on telling stories that help you live a better life. His work reaches over 300,000 people each month across various platforms like Medium, Quora, his own blog, and a website called 4 Minute Books, where he's published over 450 book summaries to date. Please welcome our guest, Niklas Göke. On today's podcast, we will cover the various impacts of technology on our fundamental development and take you on a journey to discovering the art of self-awareness. Nick talks about a cognitive bias that has run wild in his mind and gives you his fundamental life lesson that will allow you to learn more about yourself. I'd like to start on the topic of technology in general. Recently, you wrote an article on the effects of smartphones on your mental well-being, where you argued that due to our overuse of technology, and I quote, on top of lacking fundamental human skills, many of our rewards for becoming better at them have disappeared. What exactly do you mean by fundamental skills, and how do you think that technology has specifically affected our generation's development of these skills?
Okay, sure. So the first part, fundamental human skills. What do I mean by that? Well, the classic example is that you use your smartphone, you overly use your smartphone, and you eventually bring your smartphone into an environment where it's not just you, but it's other people. So you stop considering sort of the smartphone as a device you might use on your own and something that you do on your own time, and you just extend that into when you're with other people. So that might lead to failure to do basic things like eye contact, listening, paying attention to what the other person is saying. It might lead to missing important parts of the conversation, so content wise. So there are these sort of side effects when you bring technology into the outside world with other people, and you replace what you would usually do if you didn't have your phone, like again listening, paying attention to people's body language, things like that, and you replace those things with maybe looking at your smartphone because you're bored in conversation, so stuff like that. So that kind of goes by the wayside of like how much potential you have to even exercise those skills when you're with other people. So a lot of it has to do with like relationships and connection, I guess.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. In fact, in some cities, I think in the Netherlands and Germany, they have installed traffic lights into the pavement. So people that are constantly staring at their smartphones don't end up actually walking into traffic. I think that's a perfect example that shows that we've completely lost our focus. And there are many other examples that show that we've lost things like empathy, compassion, even the ability to communicate, among many other skills. Do you think this is what technology is forcing us to do, or do you think it comes down to the habits that we've developed around the use of technology?
I think it's I think a lot of it is how we use it. So the way we behave. So when you turn to your smartphone to, find something funny, scroll through your feeds to feel good, to get these little dopamine hits from finding cool stuff on Instagram, watching videos and so on. There it's more like you're trying to replace that and have the technology do that part which is supposed to like happen in the conversation. So it's not getting more efficient, right? So the dopamine release you get from seeing a funny cat video isn't better than the dopamine you would get and all the other chemical effects when you actually laugh about a joke with a person. And the line is fine and it's difficult to find, and it's hard to know where should I not use technology and what should I not use it for, and where does it actually make sense, right? And where can I like gain time and help people better in better ways and so on. And that's just really difficult because it's become so fused with how we behave and how we live every day.
For us to realize where that line is, it's incredibly important for us to become self aware, which means being able to consciously realize what we're thinking and doing, and being able to decipher the motives behind these thoughts and actions. You've gone as far as saying one of the most important human capacities is self awareness. And you've stated that it can improve your thinking, mental health, and decisions, and thus your results in the so called game of life. Why is it so important to develop self awareness, and how do you think it's best practiced in society as it is today?
The importance of self awareness is it just makes you a lot more confident, happy, resilient. So it just doesn't give you as much anxiety about life, about what you're doing every day. A lot of that disappears when you have self-awareness, when you just know what you're up to, why you're doing what you do. So it's just a really important component of being this idea of like the whole person, right? So you're complete, you can stand for yourself, you don't need a lot of external validation, you don't need your parents to tell you how great you are, and all these kinds of things. So self-awareness really, really helps with all those things, and finding where you can draw these things from. So if you lack confidence, how can I build it? And that takes self-awareness, like to know you lack confidence and to know where you need to go to actually build it. So that's why I think it's really important.
You mentioned self confidence. So, does self confidence, along with some of the other abilities you mentioned, add to these set of human fundamental skills that we should be developing? But unfortunately, mainstream education has seemed to really stray away from focusing on these skills.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the array of these skills, like it's quite large, and I think a lot of them go. So education is one place where we lack these things. Then overly relying on technology is another, and parenting is another. So a lot of these things are like good manners, good behavior at the table, stuff like putting your smartphone away at the table. Like that's something you might learn as a child, or you might not learn it. So and that depends on the family environment you have at home. So yeah, that list extends a lot.
So, why do you think our generation doesn't embrace this concept of self awareness, but instead kind of goes out there searching for other solutions?
Well, I think very few people are raised to be self-aware. So it's not something that comes natural as you grow up because you're so focused on going to school, doing your duties, then you get the adult responsibilities placed on top of you, like layered in as you get older and older. So it's really there has to be some conscious effort, and unless, let's say, your parents or you have a great teacher who does it, who pushes you to do things that make you self-aware, like meditation, like just spending time away from your phone, like traveling by yourself, like journaling. If you don't have if you don't have these external influences, it's just something that we don't naturally tend to. It's a skill we have to develop. So unless you're sort of raised into it, it's just something that you have to start from scratch when you get older. Now, for us as a generation, I think it's just harder to it's gotten a lot harder to start that process because we have so many incentives not to, with the replacements from technology. Like, okay, I can just go on Facebook or YouTube and watch videos and make myself feel good that way. So why should I not do that and go outside and take a walk in the woods alone by myself, right? So it's the incentives to start that process. A lot of those have like fallen away, and it's just a lot harder to find them and to see them.
Yeah, that completely makes sense actually. I wanted to kind of move on to another topic about role models. So, even though there are kind of many role models in today's society that are championing the importance of self awareness, they seem to be from the generation above us. Now, unfortunately, they haven't grown up in a society consumed by technology, which makes it incredibly hard for them to relate to today's youth's problems. So, for people of the younger generation who have realized the pitfalls in the overuse of technology and have found solutions for themselves in particular, is it their responsibility and duty to step up and impart this wisdom on others that aren't as aware?
I agree, 100%. Because at the end of the day, we have what we have. So we are a generation that struggles with technology, and we just have to deal with it, right? So it does us no good to say, okay, yeah, our parents had it, and maybe they didn't teach us, and so on. That all sucks, but it's on us to deal with it. So if you're one of the lucky ones who you either had an environment where you naturally built these things, or you learned to do it on your own, definitely pass those on. Like show it to others. Just use opportunities to try like in non-threatening ways to introduce people to these things and just sort of pass on the message. 100%.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore, actually. Cognitive biases. So you tend to regularly mention and write about cognitive biases. I wanted you to give us an example of a particular bias that has affected your life and how you became aware of it and kind of overcame it.
Okay, good one. Let me think about that one for a second. Basically, social proof. So when you see that 100,000 people bought those Nike running shoes before you, you're more likely to buy them because they're kind of validated. Okay, so the social consensus is this is a good product, so you might buy it. And one funny way this happened to me, and this is an experiment I just started running, is on Twitter. So I would look through Twitter and I noticed that I have a tendency to retweet and like uh, the tweets more when they already have a lot of likes and retweets. So these social metrics, they're supposed to tell you, they're supposed to act as this filter, but actually what they do is they remove the onus of filtering from you and they take that on the platform, so you stop doing it. So when you scroll through your tweets, you're not actually assessing each tweet and judging it the way you usually would. You're not thinking about like, do I like this? Is this smart? Do I think this is funny? You mostly go by what other people have said before you by judging the number of likes and retweets. So when I noticed that, I'm trying an extension right now that's like remove vanity metrics, so you can have not displayed the number of likes and retweets. So you're forced to actually think about each tweet for yourself, and you don't let the social consensus do that for you. You don't see the numbers, you have to think for yourself.
Yeah, I actually find it very interesting when people kind of carry out these experiments on themselves to kind of troubleshoot and figure out what's going on in their mind. Um, what would your advice be to other people when it comes to breaking a bias in their life, or at the least kind of becoming aware of it so that they can go and make a change to their thought processes?
I think the first thing is reading about them. So that's and we're at self-awareness again, right? So the biggest part of it, the whole the 20% that gets you the 80% of results, as we love to say, is that by knowing you have biases and just remembering that from time to time, you will start looking for them and just start asking the question like, is there a chance that I am biased here? And you can do that by reading up on Wikipedia, on places like Medium, Quora, Googling cognitive biases. There's a long list of all of them. And you can look at specific ones and so on. But the first step is really starting being aware of it. And I guess that goes with learning about it. So just having the curiosity to say, this is something I want to learn more about. I think that's a great first step. So literally put cognitive biases into Google and you'll be on your way.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think we just have to all develop that curiosity to want to learn more about these things. I wanted to end with one final piece of advice that you can pass on to our generation. What exactly has been the biggest factor that has helped you become more self aware?
For me, the biggest thing has been something that I don't see it talked about all that much, which is habits. So changing my habits, because I was never that big of a meditation guy. I've experimented with it here and there, but I've never gotten too deep into it. But I've become a lot more self-aware than I used to be. And I think the thing for me that drove that was experimenting with my habits. I started that 6 years ago where I wanted to make deliberate efforts to change some things like quitting biting my nails and picking up sports and all these things. So if you start with one habit experiment where you say, man, I really wish I could, I don't know, run a marathon or do 50 push-ups in a row or something like that, I would say start with a habit experiment, because habit experiments, they kind of force you to become self-aware. You have to track how you're doing. You have to see if you're getting better. If it doesn't work for a week or you don't do the habit for a couple days in a row, you have to ask what went wrong. So I got a lot of self-awareness out of that. And I think it's a very peculiar kind of non wooey way. Like if you're not the kind of spiritual person, and if that stuff doesn't speak to you as much, I think habit experiments are a great way to try and become more self-aware.
Brilliant. You guys have heard it here. If you really want to start becoming more self aware, start trying those habit experiments. Nick, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Make sure you check out Nick on Medium and head on over to his website, where you can dig deeper into the topics we spoke about today. The links will be in the description below. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe and stay updated on our weekly podcast, where you can get life-changing advice from experts in all walks of life to unlock your mind.